So we got to see a pretty interesting press conference with Aaron Rodgers. If you missed it, I figured I'd give a quick recap. You can also check it out. I'm sure it's on YouTube currently. Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams, and plenty other Green Bay Packers had press conferences today. Although I will be just focusing on Rodgers and Adams because it was interesting. You know, you think, okay, press conference, it'll be boring football players just giving non-answers. Well, Rodgers really was honest and kind of open with the media in a way he often isn't. You know, he is someone who is kind of notoriously closed off with that kind of stuff and does handle things behind closed doors. Well, he decided to be very open about it, and I'm kind of glad he was because it's interesting. So let's talk about what he talked about during the press conference because I haven't made a ton of content about this whole situation because I like to wait for stuff to clear up, and now it feels like stuff has fully cleared up. So I figured I'd just talk about the press conference and what happened. One of the first things he brought up was that he was frustrated with how Green Bay has let some of the past outgoing veterans leave. He mentioned that some weren't offered contracts and some were lowballed or not given the respect they deserve. In fact, he brought up Nelson a little bit later on in the press conference and how his leadership could have really helped the team. He said it could have helped Davante Adams kind of grow into that number one wide receiver role maybe a little bit quicker than it did. And they let Nelson go, and just he felt like I think it's to me it came across as he felt like Green Bay didn't value intangibles the way that maybe he does. He also this was interesting to me because I knew that he was upset about the Nelson thing, but he brought up how Charles Woodson was willing to take a pay cut, and they decided not to keep him, which that surprised me because he's Charles Woodson. You think that you do whatever you can to keep him. He mentioned that he doesn't want to be a lame duck quarterback after an MVP season, which makes sense. He doesn't want to feel like he makes one misstep and then he's gone. Part of that is it's the NFL. I mean, you do have to at a certain point. It is a performance-based business, but he feels like he's clearly performed and he's not. He's got years left in him, is how Rodgers feels. I think that's part of the frustration. That last part is a bit of speculation, but I think it's relatively reasonable to assume that. Some interesting just things that I didn't really expect, but I found interesting. So one thing he brought up was that after the draft, he was actually offered some money by Green Bay, and he turned it down and said it's not about the money. That's not what my frustration is. It's not if you give me you throw some money at me, I'm not going to then just change my opinion on this. So it clearly isn't just about he wants more money. He did mention that he loves Matt LaFleur and he's glad he's here. So again, Rodgers' frustration has always been with the front office. There was kind of that narrative early on when LaFleur got there of is there a rift? Well, doesn't appear to be the case. I think he's a big Matt LaFleur fan, which makes sense. Rodgers brought up several times that this was not a draft day thing. This is not something that happened on draft day. He mentioned that he did not leak anything to the media, and he even expressed frustration with the media. And, I have expressed frustration with the media as well, despite being kind of part of the media as a YouTuber, because I do feel like there was a lot of people getting very angry at Aaron Rodgers when we didn't know the full story. And honestly, even stuff where if you spent, I spent the only time I talked about this before today was on the podcast because I feel like podcast that's kind of free range, say whatever you want. But even then, it's like I did some research, like 30 minutes of research, and I found like half of the stuff people were saying wasn't even true. So I understand all of that stuff. So he has a right to be frustrated with the media, but luckily he's still being honest with the media. So that's kind of a cool thing from Aaron Rodgers. I think at least. He also so a couple things he's mentioned. One thing was part of what his frustration is, and part of what he wants to do more is have a say in the free agents that get brought in. Which, on one hand, makes you say, okay, listen, you aren't the general manager. You are just a player here. And if you're a general manager and you believe in yourself, well, you should listen to your own decisions than listen to a quarterback's decisions. But I did think Rodgers brought up some decent points where he brought up that he's practiced with a lot of these guys. So he can kind of have that firsthand experience that just you can't have if you're a GM because you don't play quarterback. So you don't know that kind of stuff, which I thought was pretty interesting. He also he implied that guys would be more likely to play in Green Bay because he and the team is good. It's a quote that kind of has gotten I feel like misconstrued a little bit, which it is a little bit funny to see how in a press conference where he criticized the media and sort of the clickbaitness of how they'll sort of change things, there were definitely some clickbait ways people said some of the stuff he said, and a big difference was this quote. Here's the quote: Green Bay isn't a huge vacation destination. People are coming here to play with me. And he did say that. However, he very clearly, right afterwards, there was a period at the end of that, but there was not a period when he said it. You can do dot 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 or comma if you want to, but right afterwards he said, "And to play for a great team and to try and win a championship." So, well, Rodgers is very honest about the fact that yeah, some guys are going to be more likely to play, with him or play with in Green Bay because of him. He never said that's the sole reason or even the biggest reason. He just that was what he said first, and I feel it was very quick right afterwards to say, and for a great team, great organization, try to win a championship, all of that stuff. So it's getting taken out of context. It truly is. He also clearly brought up that it's not all personnel decisions that he's frustrated with. He just wants to be more involved in things. He brought up the Jake Kumaro situation where people still kind of make fun of him because, like, really, you're not freaking out about Jake Kumaro. He called Jake Kumaro the second best wide receiver in training camp last year, which, again, some people, or, when it happened, I can't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago, but when it happened, he called him the second best wide receiver in training camp. And it's true. I mean, you look at the receivers around there, it's reasonable to say that, at least. And if that's how Rodgers felt, I mean, I think the bigger concern is how is Kumaro your second best receiver in training camp? That's kind of the bigger issue there. But still, I think it's fair to say, like, yeah, if this is the guy Rodgers has a connection with, it probably does make sense to keep him. So again, I'm sure the Packers front office had their reasons for getting rid of him, but that's Rodgers he even brought up how he just wants to be in the conversation. So even if they end up going the other way, Rodgers can be there. He can give his pitch, and they'll say, "We know that, but because of this, this, and that, we're still going to get rid of him." So that's kind of what Rodgers is frustrated with. He mentioned that he still considers it to be an honor to be the Green Bay Packers quarterback, which is, he's always, from what I've seen of him, he very much loves the Green Bay Packers as, a historic franchise, and he loves the fans. Clearly, his issue is not with the fans, it's not with the players, not with the coaching staff, only the front office. And it's interesting. When he was asked if he could see himself finishing his career as a Packer, he said that's a tough question to answer, and kind of just didn't really answer it at all. So I'm assuming that means he just doesn't know. He hopes he could see himself finishing his career as a Packer, I think, but I don't think he knows if it'll happen. He also said he thought about what retirement would look like. He paid attention to what retirement could potentially look like, not in a, like, I don't think he ever said it in a way that made him seem like he wanted to retire or was, like, heavily considering retirement, but he kind of, in a way of, like, he took some time and said, "Well, if I were to retire, what would it look like?" kind of thing. That was at least my interpretation of it. Rodgers, although he did kind of talk about retirement, he also has mentioned a clear difference between Favre and Rodgers was that prior to when they drafted Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre had mentioned he was kind of considering retirement, whereas Rodgers, right before they drafted Jordan Love, had not considered retirement at all. So that is a key difference, I think, along with the fact that, because they were the same age, but Rodgers, he's playing in an era where quarterbacks don't get hit as much. There's not going to be a bounty gate on him. So it's more logical that the Packers would have more years with Rodgers at this point, you would assume. To me, one of the interesting quotes he said was, "You see some dysfunction and either want to help fix things or leave." And Rodgers made it clear that he wanted to help fix things because those are the two options, and he wanted to help fix things. And I think, another thing he brought up was the fact that he kind of just felt like, okay, well, if I'm going to be a lame duck quarterback, then just get rid of me now. That's kind of the, wanting out of Green Bay. It was more of that. He doesn't want to be out of Green Bay. He just wants to play in Green Bay for a while. And if that's not going to happen, then just get rid of him now. That's sort of his mindset. He doesn't want to be 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out. He said he didn't bring up anything publicly because he wanted to handle things behind closed doors. This was a big criticism that people gave of Aaron Rodgers was, even if all of this is overblown and untrue, why not just send out a tweet saying, I have no interest in leaving the Green Bay Packers, something like that. Well, I think one thing is he might have been still talking about this stuff. They're still going through things. So he could say, like, don't worry, I'm fine. But then what if the Green Bay front office is being horrible to him, and he eventually says, "Okay, I'm done. I'm retiring. I'm done." Well, now he's just lied to everybody. So I think he just was patient. That's my interpretation of it. One last thing that I thought was interesting about his press conference was he mentioned that the time off was great. When someone asked, "How was your time off?" he said, "Great." And he said that it was great for his mental health. And he also made it clear he wasn't depressed. It was just good for his mental health. So it's said usually only talk about people's mental health when it's about depression. He wasn't depressed, but it still was good for him mentally, which is interesting. And he even brought up Simone Biles, the gymnast who has left the team. I'm not super big into the Olympics, but the gymnast who left the team because of mental health reasons. Well, Rodgers just kind of brought that up. It's an important thing that athletes should probably, be more open about talking. Is sort of my interpretation of what he said. And finally, a few notes from the Davante Adams press conference that happened right after. This one wasn't as long, but Adams, when he was asked, it was funny because right off the bat, he was asked about his thoughts on Randall Cobb coming back, and he said, "Ecstatic. Now we need Jordy Nelson to come back because obviously they all played together back in the day." Adams is very clear about the fact that he wants to be the highest paid wide receiver, and he does not feel like he's getting paid enough. He said straight up, he was asked, "Would you be back here if you're not the highest paid wide receiver?" And he said no. He will not join the Green Bay Packers next year if he's not getting more than Davante Adams. And to me, it felt more of a pride thing as opposed to a greed thing. The quote that's getting circulated around a little bit is, "I've earned a right to be paid the highest in the league. If they don't believe that or want to come to an agreement, or kind of make me feel good about my contract." So basically, to me, it feels a little bit less about the actual money itself and more about the pride thing. About he feels that he's the best, or at least one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and should be paid that way. His current cap hit is just $16.7 million this year, and it was a backloaded deal. So his average salary on this contract was 14.5 million, which is definitely a steal for the guy he is now. Granted, when he was 24 and signed a contract, he wasn't the guy he is now at 29. But as he said, "I like to say I've outperformed my last contract," and he certainly has. So I think it's kind of the frustration of he signs this contract, and if he wasn't performing well, then he would have been cut, or at least they would have had to rework his deal, and he would be getting less money. Whereas since he outperforms the contract, well, he's still stuck making that much money. So that's kind of the frustration. But again, that's the NFL. It's a ruthless business. It is. So this seems to be more of just a typical contract dispute. But going back to sort of what Aaron Rodgers said about all of the superstars and all of the great veteran players that Green Bay has kind of let go in unceremonious ways, he feels like it could be handled better. And I think, it could be happening now with Davante Adams. Maybe that's even part of what's adding the fuel to the fire, perhaps. Because for Adams, it feels very personal. For Rodgers, it feels almost like he's seen this happen to other people, and he doesn't want it to happen to him as long as he doesn't want it to happen to other people as well. One fun thing is Davante Adams showed his new Jordans, which apparently aren't even out yet, according to him. So that was I thought that was fun. But other than that, yeah, you know, not as much to say about him as it is with Rodgers, but still interesting stuff and not exactly something I thought was going to come up today. But I appreciate Rodgers being so open. And yeah, I guess my final thoughts on it is it's good that they're going to be back because they're two of the most electric players in the league, and I don't want to have to see them not play next year. So it's glad to see that they'll be back, and it should be a lot of fun. So yep, what was your thought on this press conference? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.